So we're 10 days into this Halloween season, and this was recorded on the 10th, but obviously not coming out until 5 days later, so yeah. And this next one we're going to talk about is just something that I was very excited about. I'm so happy that it turned out to be the film that it was. Late Night with the Devil is probably one of the better found footage films of the last couple of years, in my perspective. I think Late Night with the Devil is such a cool idea, and it's so fitting for this new realm we're stepping into of horror films where people are just trying new things. We're going for the gullet of not making cookie cutter stories. We're not doing haunted houses. We're not doing spirits. We're not doing possessions. We're not doing slashers. We're taking pre-established notions and putting them into different realms. This falls in line for me in the same perspective of films like Presence, films like Good Boy that's about to come out, films like a violent in a Violent Nature. All these films that take the perspective and show you something else or just show you something unique. This idea of a late night talk show showing a live exorcism is it's sort of what the premise of the a really good parody movie I know called Repossessed, which is a Leslie Nielsen film with Linda Blair and a couple of other people, and that's kind of a spoof on The Exorcist. But this is sort of taking that idea of what happens in that film and making it a serious idea. Like, it takes the premise of the 70s late night talk show that's kind of on the brink of getting canceled, and the guy does such crazy lengths to keep an audience with him that he brings on this actually meant to be possessed little girl with I think the psychiatrist that watches over her, because they don't really think it's 100% a real possession. And so she brings him on, and he's trying to show like the world, like, here, the first live exorcism. And of course it goes wrong, because that's how these stories go. It's the process of learning all of that and all of the routes that it takes to actually look like it starts off like here's a whole bunch of newsreels showing you what's going on. And then every other instance is either how the show is seen from a viewer's perspective or what the behind the scenes would be when filmed by like the road filmmakers on the set of the show. And that's the found footage aspect, because it's showing you what would guess would be B-roll and then the actual live show. And the tension it builds up is it can feel like it's being missed, because there is like this weird level of he's fighting for his show, and it shows a lot of that. And then when it comes to the actual scary stuff, a lot of that doesn't fully happen at a pace that feels like a movie. Because again, it's meant to feel like a talk show, and it feels like a talk show. So if you can get to the point where the good stuff happens and just deal with all of that world building, and then get through all of the stage setting for what the big event is when everything kind of goes to shit, it's well worth the payoff. The payoff is so worth it for the sort of psychedelic experience you get when the demon finally just goes off on everybody. I do know that there's, mixed, more favorable reviews towards this film. So I'm not the only person talking positive about it, but there are some negative things that people have kind of brought up about it to begin with. For example, they feel like the pacing is kind of weak. Again, you have to view it in the sense that it's a talk show first and then a horror movie second. So when you look at it like it's a talk show, it's like the same thing. To me, it's very much on the same level of the film Lake Mungo, if you've never seen that. Lake Mungo is a great representation of this new kind of path that movies should have been taken back when that movie came out, I think in 2008, but nothing really did. So it stood out on that time frame as like a very unique and worthwhile film to watch, because it took the premise of like a 60 Minutes interview and said, what if it was real? But then what if it was fake? And then what if it was real? And then the story process of how things started playing out in the real world, essentially. And it doesn't feel like a film. This does feel like a film, but you have to pace it as if it was a talk show, which, guest after guest and explanation and behind the scenes and commercial breaks. it all makes sense. So if you're not okay with that pacing, I could see where the negativity could come from you. I did see some people that were critiquing it for how long the exposition is, because what it does at the very beginning, like I said, it's like sort of a news report explaining what's been going on with the talk show. A lot of people don't like that. I happen to love that because I think it makes perfect sense, because this is essentially the make or break episode. What you're watching is this guy's last ditch effort to make his show last longer, and that story that is shown at the beginning is exactly how it would happen. This is exactly what they would show for what is supposed to be the last night. If I remember correctly, I think it actually is the last night, and this is the hope that somebody wants to redo it. And I think he gets close to it, but nothing is confirmed that the show continues to go on, or the show, I can't remember if that is it, or the show is canceled completely. Again, I think the positives outweigh the negatives. I think that the tone it sets for the authentic period, it looks like a period piece. It takes place in the 70s, and it feels like it takes place in the 70s. There is a really effective buildup for that tension if you can get past it being paced like a talk show. And I've said it a couple of times, because you have to look at it that way. You have to look at it as if it's a talk show first and a horror movie second, because it's meant to be found footage. It's meant to feel like you're watching something that's an actual piece of archive footage, because that's what the majority of these found footage films feel like. They're meant to be this thing where it's like, we found the lost tapes of the missing townspeople or something. That's what it is. And very few things really feel like that. Like, they feel staged. This feels staged for a talk show, and that's where it might even break like found footage rules in that sense, where it's like, it doesn't feel staged because it feels staged. If that makes any sense. Maybe I'm talking gibberish, but to me, it felt like the same way I felt when I was watching Lake Mungo. It feels like it's on the same level of Lake Mungo, and there are so many people that praise Lake Mungo that are probably also people who praise this film, because that's what it feels like. It feels like these authentic pieces of what both of these individual stories are trying to tell. This news report and this late night talk show. They don't feel like movies. They feel like what you're watching is sort of real. And I know it's not, because it's got David, I never pronounce his last name correctly, so I'm going to do my very best here. David Dashmalchian? I'm definitely mispronouncing it. Please correct me in the comments if you want. But he does a tremendous job, and he, I think, is kind of the only person I recognize as being a bit... If they got a no-name person to do it, maybe you would have felt a little bit more like it wasn't 100% a film, but anybody else besides David would have probably not done as good of a job as the host as David did. I feel like he is a very underappreciated actor, and he's getting more and more recognition in the last few years, and a film like this is definitely up there as being one to really sit down and take a look at him and go, he can pull off a couple of really good things. What was another film that he was really good in? It was with that girl. It was with that girl from Yellow Jackets. It's the Boogeyman. What was it called? It was called The Boogeyman, which came out the year before. It had the little girl in it with the ball that glows, and her older sister is from Yellow Jackets. Yeah, he has a very small role in that, but he's tremendous. He pulls off the character he plays in that tremendous, and it really feels genuine. He's just a really, really good actor. So he's a great choice for the talk show host of this film. So what else is interesting about this film is that it was nominated for a ton of awards, but it really didn't win a lot. I see that at the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards last year, David won Best Lead Performance, and then the Best Screenplay, the guys who wrote the film also won, but it was also nominated for Best Costume Design and Best Wide Release, which I don't remember it getting a wide release. I think it was Video On Demand. Nominated for so many things. It won Best Independent Film at the Saturn Awards, Kansas City Film Critics Circle. I don't know what that is, but David won the Best Actor for that as well. It was nominated for Best Film, Best Lead Actor, Best Cinematography, Best Editing. Awards up the wazoo, which is a lot of awards to be nominated for what is essentially an independent film. So this got a lot of buzz, and it sort of fell off because, it came out over a year ago. And I think it's just one of those perfect films that if you sat with it today, or if you try to sit with it for the first time during this Halloween season, it's just perfect. It's just a perfect film to either return to or watch for the first time if you haven't already. And I feel like this is going to be a film that I add to my watch every Halloween list, which, you know, tons of movies on there. I don't always get to all of them, but I'm definitely rewatching this year.